Hello, America, and welcome to another episode of the Ultra MK podcast, where together we are reversing the narrative. I'm your host, Matt Kennedy, and on today's show, we have a new guest joining us today from Oakland, California. She is the mayoral candidate for 2026 as to be Oakland mayor. Her name is Mindy Pechenuk. And today we are going to not only get to know Mindy and why she's running for mayor, but also some very important topics that pertain to the Trump administration and their economic policies, as well as national security. And these are topics that Mindy has spent time researching, and I think you're going to enjoy today's show. So stick around, stay tuned. This is going to be a great episode.
That is our obligation, to inform and alert the American people, to make certain that they possess all the facts that they need and understand them as well, the perils, the prospects, the purposes of our program, and the choices that we face.
Hi, Mindy. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Matt. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. Ever since I saw you at the Silicon Valley Forum, Liberty Forum, it's so cool sometimes to see how God brings people back together in
Exactly.
different parts of this movement, in California and us trying to get California back on track. And it was so great running into you again. I'd remembered the first time I ever met you and your husband, you guys had a booth at the Clay Clark Reawaken America tour and Tulare, and in that cold building that they put
It
us in,
was freezing.
the freezing cold building. But it was so delightful meeting you and your husband. And at that time, I believe you were running a candidacy as well. And so I'm just so blessed that I crossed paths with you again. And I'm really excited to kind of get into the show today, because I think that not only do, people want to understand from a bigger perspective of what's happening within the administration, because we're seeing things that we've never seen before in history. Like we're seeing things, for example, Canada and the relationship with us in Canada,
Yeah.
Greenland, the relationship with us in Greenland, Venezuela and the relationship with us in Venezuela, and so many other parts of the Western Hemisphere. And then taking that perspective with how the Western Hemisphere has been dealing with Europe, Asia, and so many other parts of the world. And when getting to know you, you have such a great perspective and purview of what we could be seeing roll out historically and based on information that you've discovered through the White House's website, directly, and then also other websites that are credible sources of information that I've queued up for us to talk about today.
Oh, great.
Before that, let's just get to know, who is Mindy Pechenuk? Why are you running for Oakland mayor?
Well, it's a short story, but a long one. Um, I've been political for the last 50 plus years of my life, and I'm now 74, proud to say. And
You don't look a day past 50.
okay, I tell you, being active, it keeps you younger.
That's right. And you're a busy bee. I know that.
Yep. And it started when something my grandmother taught me, which I didn't quite understand when I was 8 years old, but I came to understand it as I got older. My grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side came over from outside of Kiev back in 1913. So I'm really only a second generation American. And she told me, Mindy, I live to make sure you have a better life. But Mindy, you have to live to make sure this world is a better place than when you came into it. And being tasked with that mission, which to me today is like being in the image of God. This is why God created us, why God gave us a beautiful mind to discover the principles via which he has ordered the universe. And And that has to go on from generation to generation. And I was actually trained as a classical musician. I'm a bassoonist and a musical historian, which is a whole other project. but but being in graduate school, I was in graduate school at Yale in the School of Music, and I couldn't stand it. I said, Mindy,
Why?
you got to. Why? There were several reasons. One, I was looking at the time, obviously in your early 20s, and you're looking at what are you going to do with your life? And seriously, I looked at what was happening to my generation, the degeneration of my generation, the boomers. And I was shocked by things, that were going on at the school. I thought the education was horrible. I thought the social environment. And I said to myself, is this really what you want to do? Now, I'm driven by music. It's one of my loves and passions of my heart. But I couldn't, but I knew I had to change the world and make music a part of that change, which is what I'll get to that part of the story, which is so I was thinking of leaving Yale and maybe going to the Peace Corps. But, as you said earlier, Matt, God works and brings people together that you didn't even know you were going to be brought together. And it just so happened, I didn't like the politics then of the Democratic Party, even though I was raised as a, FDR Kennedy Democrat.
Yeah.
Republican Party at that time the leadership didn't uh, thrill me either.
Hmm.
I became a Republican when Trump ran in 2016
Yeah.
because finally a leader, that was somebody that I knew where his mind and soul and heart was coming from.
Hmm.
But I happened to run into a movement which grabbed my attention, and it was run by somebody who's very controversial like Trump, Lyndon LaRouche.
Hmm.
And finally, a political movement that was involved in the question of being in the image of God, the creative mind of man, and what is the American system that makes it so unique, the founding principles of our nation. And here we are celebrating the 250th anniversary. And as I say, not only are we celebrating the birth of our nation, but we're all here responsible now for the next 250 years.
Right.
And that'll get to the second part of my journey. So I joined with Lyndon LaRouche at the time, did a lot of both organizing and work in music.
What part of the timeline did this happen? Was this the
This
late
is
60s, early
No,
70s?
this is the early 70s,
Early
70,
70s. Okay.
74, about 74,
So
1974.
before you joined with Mr. LaRouche, you were going to Yale, and this was probably the late 60s. Is that around the?
Well, I graduated high school in 69. I graduated, so I went through 4 years of my bachelor's degree at Queens College in New York in music.
Okay.
And this was going on to my graduate work.
Hmm.
And so it was about 74 when I made the decision
Okay.
that to leave Yale because I was not happy with the way, and I think, it's a personal decision you make, and I made
Sure.
it. And you know what? I never regretted that decision. I think it was the
Sure.
best decision I made.
Well, in history, if we look back at that timeline, that's the height of the Vietnam War, and that's when a lot of universities were holding massive protests, and um, a lot of people were just angry with what they've been seeing on the television screen because that was the first war that was being covered on television, and a lot of people, a lot of men were being drafted into that war. So I know that tensions were heightened, but I can understand, especially moving forward in time, how the universities were hotbeds for propaganda to roll out, and that was a massive decay of the moral fabric of our family unit, was around that time of points because their parents, if you're in school, their parents were the World War II generation. So they looked at the world way different compared to the Vietnam generation, where a lot of things
Right.
were starting to degrade. So that's an interesting time that you were living in.
Yeah, no, it was. And And now looking back at that time, being a lot older and a lot more mature, given the experiences of the last 50 years, it was so important because, you know, you see the effects of what the globalists, what the British Empire, their forces of evil, of what they did since the destruction of my generation. And now you look at the destruction of the younger generations today, and with the transgender, with the whole woke culture. And I realized then, when in 74, that we were going in that direction. I didn't know the particulars, obviously. I didn't know, I wasn't highly political. I had to learn a lot but I knew I had to the key was I had to take responsibility.
Right.
I had to get out of I had to get out of the comfort zone. I had to stand up against a lot of people telling me I was wrong to do what I did. But I knew it was the right thing to do. Because if we didn't change the conditions, and I didn't know then what I know politically today, I was naive, you know,
Sure.
but I knew that what was wrong. And I knew you had to take responsibility because, you're born and you're going to die. And the question is, what do you do with that life in that short span? Whether even if you
Right.
make it to 100, even if you
Right.
make it to it, right? It's
Right.
still a speck. But yet, God created us in his image
Right.
with a beautiful mind and this notion of agape and immortality. And you had to think about, I was forced to think about, and I said this to myself at the time, what's going to happen to the younger generation if my generation is already so sold out on these
Yeah.
principles?
Right.
And that's what got me, that I said, I have to do something. I have to try something. I can't just go the normal pathway,
Hmm.
to do it. And that's what guided my decisions at the time and guide my decisions today. And so I lived, you know, I went from living on the East Coast, at that time, having joined the LaRouche movement, which is now, I have to do a little disclaimer because just so it's clear that today it's Promethean Action, it is called. After Mr. LaRouche died in 2019, there was a split, and we who supported President Trump and we who supported the ideas of Lyndon LaRouche formed Promethean Action. And and we're not associated with Helga Zepp LaRouche. And I say this because if somebody goes to Google it, I want to make sure they go to Promethean Action and not to the other group because
That's
they
not a
don't.
term. That's not a term we hear every day. What does Promethean mean? Do you know?
Yeah, Promethean is the beautiful image from Greek culture.
Hmm.
Prometheus was the one who stood up against the gods of Olympus, against Zeus. And
Okay.
he brought fire, he brought creativity, he brought knowledge to mankind.
Hmm.
And this, of course, was a threat to the oligarchy. And this was a threat to those in those days of the oligarchy. Because if man knew how to use fire for a better good, knew knowledge for a better good, they weren't going to be held by the gods of Olympus. And so Promethean, that's why we used the Promethean for it being today's Prometheans. And it's also why it's embedded, if you look at the historical evolution of development, to the point where Christianity was a major leap forward. And actually bringing that question when Christ came and to earth as the Son of God and brought his the image to man that you can live in the imitation of Christ. You can live and be one with God, and
Right.
that the individual is
Right.
responsible to something greater to build the community.
Right.
A principle that allows the individual not to be anarchistic like we see today, where
Right.
kids think at 4 years old you're changing your sex. No, the idea is you're responsible to the next generation being better than you through scientific, cultural development that advances mankind. And that what happened in the Renaissance and what's happening with what Christianity brought. And I say this, I was raised Jewish, okay? So
Mhm.
I was not raised as a Christian. But it's universal.
Right.
Once you actually understand, it's a universal conception of man in the image of God.
Hmm.
And but it's a whole, I don't know if you want me to go through the whole discussion on this. It's a very in-depth discussion. And but this is what really founded this country. This is
Right.
what made us unique. And that brings us to the current war. So my politics took me to Chicago in 1980 when Lyndon LaRouche was running for president. And that's where he came out for the New Hampshire primary in 1980, where he met Ronald Reagan. And Reagan brought LaRouche into his administration because LaRouche helped Reagan defeat George Bush, that faction, which is not our friendly faction in the Republican Party. They're on the
Oh,
oligarchical side.
yeah.
And so Reagan brought Mr. LaRouche into his administration. He gave him White House security clearance, and LaRouche designed the Strategic Defense Initiative for
Hmm.
Reagan. He was his back channel negotiator to the Russians, and he was also working on destroying the drug trade and drug cartels, which, thank God, President Trump has taken up today. And as from a position of president, he is doing what nobody else has done to get the drug cartels off the map.
That's right. He's getting to the
But
root. He's getting to the root of the cartel, especially with the Cartel de las Soles in Venezuela.
yep,
Their net worth was over $2 trillion. So he's
yep.
getting to the bottom of it. I agree.
Oh, absolutely. And we can come back to that in a little later because I'd like to talk about that a
Sure.
lot. It's a passion to my heart, which is partially my running for mayor of Oakland.
Hmm.
And so I lived in Chicago for 27 years, got married to my husband Gerald,
I
who's
love
also,
Gerald, by the way. He's such a
yeah,
good man. You both are a great couple.
yeah, well, I think it's because we share this mission. This has been our lives. We don't have another life.
Yeah.
But this has been our mission, which is why we got married. And so I think since we have that love between us and the mission, it it, it carries everything forward.
Right.
And then we lived and organized in Chicago for 27 years, building the movement around these ideas. And then in 2007, May 2007, we came to California to continue the mission, to help the organizing of a youth movement that was developing at the time in Los Angeles. And I'm not again. This is my final move.
What was the name of the movement that was forming in 2007 in Los Angeles?
It was then the LaRouche Pack.
The LaRouche Pack. Okay.
The LaRouche Pack it was called, and and we had a LaRouche youth movement at the time, and
Was it similar to like the movement that Charlie Kirk got going with?
similar but different
Okay.
in only that Charlie did a lot of beautiful work on the campuses directly, but it was very similar in values, similar in in-depth ideas of this Renaissance conception of man, the Christian conception, going back. What LaRouche did, he made accessible, besides his own discoveries in these areas of economics, tying all this creative question together, is he brought alive the great minds of the past who have been relegated to the dump heap. People like Plato, people like Nicholas Acusa, who was a great theologian. He was a cardinal in the Catholic Church. He was a complete he made scientific revolutions and discoveries. People like Gottfried Leibniz. I mean, these are names that most people don't know today.
Hmm.
Leibniz was, he's in the 1600s. His ideas were the foundations with Cusa and the Renaissance before with Dante of actually forming our Constitution.
Wow.
This was the ideas of the Pilgrims when they came over in the 1600s. This it wasn't, and this is what had to be destroyed. People like J.S. Bach in music, who lived 1685 to 1750, who was in the middle of this Northern Renaissance in Europe with Leibniz was before him, but his ideas, Kepler, the great scientist who really discovered gravity and the ordering of the planets and the solar system, and the method of mind of this kind, this is what the enemy wanted to destroy, the knowability of these discoveries. And this is what we have today. If children were taught from kindergarten on, or even when they're little at home, the music of J.S. Bach, got to experience, and a young child, a young baby, if you play them Mozart, they will get a happy expression on their face. Not because they know the notes, they don't know the notes, they don't even know there's an instrument. But the beauty of a really classical idea resonates with the human soul and the divine spark in us that God gave us to resonate with that kind of beauty and that kind of culture.
Right.
And that's the kind of education system we need to bring back. And that's why the enemy destroyed it
Yeah.
to
Well, I
where we
think
are
that,
today.
and your history background is just amazing, and with what we're learning now, just since we've had access, this much access to information through the internet, it has for me helped me in my great awakening process because, like most Americans, we never knew that there were factions working within the U.S. government and the CIA who were deliberately trying to um, infiltrate our nation through different methods and working with the globalist powers around the world that have a different allegiance than maybe you and I would with a belief
Yeah.
of Jesus Christ as our God and Savior. These people are a part of a system that has a totally different philosophy and religious order. Including secret societies. It's amazing. Like you have a background with Yale talking about Bush
See,
and the skull and bones, correlation there.
exactly. And that's how,
So now
exactly, yeah.
we're taking what we have you've lived through with the information age, now combining that with all of the loose ends and the gaps that needed to be closed with how it all happened with Operation Paperclip and people being brought in from the Nazi Party into the Pentagon and all of these different allegiances that are uniparty. I call them the uniparty because they're
Right.
just
That's right.
they might work as a Democrat, they might work as a Republican, but they have allegiances with a new global new world order. It's interesting to kind of see how these things have happened throughout history, but there's always been people working within, I feel, like the white hats or the good guys that were trying to counter what was going on to our society through the CIA and through shadow governments. And just even you just right now talking about Bach and the music and how it affects people, I learned that the cabal has changed the frequency that it used to be tuned to. Instruments and music were tuned to 432 hertz, and they moved it to
Exactly.
a 440, which is a low vibrational frequency that gives people bad anxiety and bad feelings within them. So it's just amazing. I love that you have a musical background with a political understanding. I think you make for such a dynamic guest on the show. So I'm just really excited that we're talking.
And you just made me very happy by what you just said about the tuning question. Part of what we did early in the 1980s was we mastered and fought for that lower tuning. In fact, I play my bassoon both at sometimes when you play with I play with a youth orchestra in the area, they play at the higher tuning side but I actually have a way to make my bassoon play at the tuning, and it makes such a difference. It's the because the lower tuning, if I could say one quick thing on that, since you brought
Sure.
it up, which is because it's really fundamental, because the lower tuning allows the actual classical idea to come through, because God created us six human singing voices with register shifts, and the great composers like Bach, Mozart, Haydn, Brahms,
Beethoven.
Verdi, Beethoven, Schumann, both Schumanns, they composed for the music at A432. I mean, Verdi, when he actually became a parliamentarian in Italy, and he tried to get legislation passed to actually make it official, but it didn't pass. But he tried,
Right,
and the raising of the tuning totally destroys the composition,
right,
and totally destroys the soul.
right.
And so one of my passions is to eventually get that lower tuning established, and it would be, we'd see another new renaissance come about.
Well, yeah, because I feel like, and I mean, I know we're kind of getting all over the place, but
I know,
it all could be
yeah.
brought together, and how it can be brought together is you're running for
Okay.
mayor of Oakland, right? And
Mhm.
I was watching some of your videos on your website about the crime, the criminality that you've seen in Oakland, and the people who live there. And if I grew up in the 80s and 90s music cultural transition of, music having more of an uplifting, positive messaging to it, to the shift of like, gangster rap and dark rock music and certain things transitioning into that darker frequency, darker lyrics. And then it kind of has created this subculture of glorifying criminality. And I've seen other podcasts where musicians are now telling stories about how they were coerced to signing these record deals and record labels and in these NDAs saying that, if you come and produce music with us, we'll give you all the money and fame that you want, but we're going to also tell you what you can and can't put out to the public. And it's like they weaponized, that music to a certain a
Right,
culture in
right.
California. And then so that's why it just kind of has made these blue cities, I call them blue cities because their
Yeah.
super majority are Democrats. It just made them really rough, crime-ridden areas. And a lot of it ties into MK Ultra and just the way that they've programmed societies in some of these big cities. It's like they've amplified MK Ultra tactics to
Yeah.
infiltrate the youth of our nation and specifically in our inner cities.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll tie this together to the present situation with what you just said, because it was an operation. British intelligence was completely involved. The City of London was completely involved. MK Ultra was one of their babies, which they did develop, along with the whole drug cartels. And this is why what President Trump is doing, and I'll go there for a minute and develop
Yeah.
it related to it, is people have to understand how unique this is. And because he understands that if you're going to bring back the American system, and this is the one in his mind, I think, and the love of what it is to be in the image of God, he knows you have to bring down the drug cartels. This is the biggest industry with human trafficking that exists right now. People don't this It's run through the offshore money markets in the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, and where you don't have to expose your identity. This is run by the international banking groupings. This is totally protected until Trump decided to actually bring it down, and he knows where the this is why he went after Venezuela. Let me put it that way. Venezuela is one, it has been since the time of Chavez, who worked with British intelligence. He worked, and this is who worked with the FARC in Colombia. And in the 1980s, the head of the Wall Street whole enterprises went down to Colombia to the jungles to meet with the FARC to work out the arrangements between Wall Street and the drugs.
Mhm.
So this has been a deep enterprise, and the first president that I know to actually have the courage and the stamina. So what he did in Venezuela, both targeting the boats. These were not fishing boats. These were drug boats. What he did to arrest Maduro and bring him and his wife to be on trial in the United States. This pulled the plug on a major source of what the enemy could do, because it's now bringing it to light. And this is why he's also going after Mark Carney in Canada. And I want to say one thing just so it's clear for all the people listening. What Trump did back in November, which was sort of the umbrella to everything he's doing, he created a new security strategy for the United States. I don't know if you can see it here.
I had it here. I'm going to bring it up,
Okay,
Mindy, on our
okay.
share screen, and
Yeah,
then you
because
can kind of walk us. Yeah,
through
you
it.
could
Yeah,
walk us through it here.
yeah,
One second.
right.
Okay, Mindy. So I found here that what you've sent me, the National Security Strategy of the United States of America, dated November 2025.
This document, and you can go to the White House website and find it there. It's all there. Uh, is the document that literally freaked out Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, van der Leyen, the head of the EU, Chatham House in England, which is the big think tank of the British Empire, where every American who sold their soul to the British elites goes and pays homage to. And by the way, Pence went there in November at the Chatham House, just like his predecessor, Henry Kissinger, went in 1982 and said, everything I do is for you in the British Empire inside the United States.
So they were basically operatives of the crown.
Yep, yep. And this is so important to understand, because what they did in our lifetime is try to convince us the British Empire was our best ally. Not
Well, they
exactly
still do that
true.
now. I was just watching that Davos video you sent me with Howard Lutnick, and there's still undertones of that they try to keep talking about. But I know that we're on to them, so we know.
Yep. And I just want to share one section of this national security document so people see why. Just go down a little bit to, it's in the next, yeah, the next page. If you can just go down past you can see it's very thorough.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's here. Introduction. Yeah. Go down a couple of paragraphs to our elites after the end
Okay,
of the Cold War. No, up a little bit. It went
up a
down to
little
four.
bit.
Yeah, up a little bit, just so people can see it one
Oh,
by
here it
one. There
is.
you go. Perfect. I want to share this because this will tell you what you need to think about. After the end of the Cold War, American foreign policy elites convinced themselves that permanent American domination of the entire world was in the best interests of our country. Yet affairs of other countries are our concern only if their activities directly threaten our interests. Our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which the American people saw no connection to the national interest. They overestimated America's ability to fund, simultaneously, a massive welfare, regulatory, administrative state alongside a massive military, diplomatic, intelligence, and foreign aid complex. They placed hugely misguided and destructive bets on globalism and the so-called free trade that hollowed out the very middle class and the industrial base on which American economic and military preeminence depend. They allowed allies and partners to offload the cost of their defense onto the American people, and sometimes to suck us into conflicts and controversies central to their interests, but peripheral or irrelevant to our own. And they lashed American policy to a network of international institutions, get that, international institutions, some of which are driven by outright anti-Americanism and many by transnationalism that explicitly seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. In sum, not only did our elites pursue a fundamental, undesirable, and impossible goal, in doing so, they undermined the very means necessary to achieve that goal, the character of our nation, upon which its power, wealth, and decency were built. Now, that is a declaration of war against the British Empire, against globalism, against all this anti-Americanism, against the very fundamental principles that make us in the image of God, the Creator.
That's
And
right.
this was the document that the enemy knew it's all over for them,
Right.
and their cows were known. And that's why what happened at Davos was so important, because two things Trump did at Davos. One, he brought his team with him. He didn't just go there by himself. He was there to make it clear your failed globalist state is over.
Right.
And he offered everybody, and that's why he spoke about his successes in America with what he's doing, saying, we offer you this. Why are you staying where you're staying?
Right. You guys have an
And
option. You guys have another option. Yeah.
exactly. And Jameson Greer, the trade ambassador, did a brilliant piece, which is called, when he spoke at Davos at the American House, which, by the way, they did not allow Gavin Newsom to speak at the American House, which is
That's
great,
right. That's
right?
right.
Jameson Greer wrote From Hamilton to Today,
I have that as
Trade
well,
and
Mindy.
U.S. Economic Strategy. And if you want to show that for a minute, I just want to read one sentence of that.
Sure.
Because the founding of our country, when we celebrate the 250th, it's so important that my fellow Americans really get to know the real thinking that shaped this country. And that's why Jameson Greer going to the Hamilton economic system that too many have forgotten is so important. And as he says in that next paragraph, he says, we should start at the beginning on another cold day, December 5th, 1791. America's first Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, delivered his report on manufacturers to Congress. In that report, Hamilton articulated a plan for the United States to shake off its economic dependency on the British Empire. Hamilton argued for strong economic policy that would allow Americans to become an industrial power, and he called for the combination of tariffs and subsidies to incentivize industrialization. Now, that is so important because of what's happened in the last 50 years. See, that used to be known in this country, that you wanted industry, the space program, new energy sources. I mean, that's how you advance a civilization and Hamilton, what he did, he created something that didn't exist, like Donald Trump is doing today. His idea of manufacturers is his idea for a national bank, which was a big controversy because he knew that we had to be able to issue credit for growth. And Trump talked about this at Davos, because if you issue credit for growth in new industries, and that's why Trump bringing back our manufacturing, using the tariffs to get back the globalists took out of the country deliberately. So as they destroyed our culture and made us backwards and destructive, they destroyed the scientific and industrial base. That was bad, they said. And so what Hamilton had to do, because we were coming out of the Revolutionary War, we were just forming a nation which went through many transformations.
Mm-hmm.
He had to create a way to deal with the debt of the country that was just formed. And that's where a national bank came in, where you could take the debt, you couldn't just write it all off. Some of it was legitimate. But you used the debt as a credit to build, like the Sargas Iron Works, to build the industry, to build the infrastructure. And you get it productive through the powers of the creative mind of the Americans, through our creative mind, building new industries, new manufacturing. And that's the American spirit. And so he created this concept that didn't exist, a national bank. It never existed anywhere in the world. He created this series of documents for George Washington, one of which is the report on manufacturers. And this is what Trump was echoing in Davos. and also in his national security document, when he said it's growth is not inflationary. You only get inflation when you stop growth, when you
Right.
stop that kind of progress. And that's why what Trump is doing is absolutely beautiful, because he's driven not by one thing here, one thing there, one thing there, one, even though it may look like on the surface, he's driven by this vision of what is sovereign nation state, what America is, what it is to be in the image of God. And he knows how to push forward. He knows when to pull back. It's called tempering. That's what we call tempering in music.
Tempering. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's like, well, tempering, you know, that because you're constantly changing the geometry to achieve, because that's how you, that's the real universe. And so
Right.
he did at the Davos summit by making also Greenland. And because, a lot of people say, why don't we pull out of NATO? Why don't we pull out of the United Nations? Sure, they're corrupt institutions. They
Right.
shouldn't exist as they exist. But you can't just pull out of something unless you've created something that can replace it that
In
is
its place.
denied.
Otherwise, there's a void, and the void could be sometimes bigger than the problem that you're dealing with. Yeah.
Exactly, Matt. Exactly. And Trump understood that, which is why he created the Board of Peace and did this at Davos, because he was creating something that didn't exist. He was bringing all kinds of nations together which have completely different cultural backgrounds. And he brought, I think, at least 35 that signed or more, and there's others that are around it. And so he brought these nations together around a common interest, the common interest of peace and economic development.
Right.
Again,
Right.
the image of God, no matter how you worship God, it's still around the question of the image of God.
Right.
And so by forming this board, he created something new that could actually do what is needed in the real world
That's right.
and actually make the UN and NATO either obsolete or subservient to what he's creating and
It's
creating with
interesting.
others. Go ahead.
So interesting, Mindy, because I see that exactly what you just laid out for us in the second President Trump term, is what we're seeing in real time. But if you remember back in his first term, 2016 to 2020, he did what was known as to become the capitulation tour, where he went around to Saudi Arabia
Right.
and he went around to China. He went around to all these different nations, basically putting them on notice that he has a lot of evidence showing what they've been involved in, which are crimes against humanity and so many different nefarious things around the world. But he was also putting them on notice to show them that there's a new system that's going to be rolling out that's going to counter their old system that they knew was falling apart. And it was the Federal Reserve System, the central
Right.
banks, their fiat currency, all of that was obviously imploding over time. And so it's really interesting how that happened back then in the timeline. And then fast forward to what's happening now. He's kind of, like you said, he's not just leaving the world with a void, pulling out of the UN. He's putting together this board of peace and giving them an opportunity to do the right thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's funny sometimes how things come out, but in the second term he was actually able to finally put together a team that's on his page, that is
Right.
working with him,
He
which
didn't have
because
that
I
the first time. He
he didn't
has a
have that
lot
the
of
first,
sabotage.
a
Yeah.
lot of sabotage. But you're right. The first thing he did when he became president, the first term, is he went to Saudi Arabia and did exactly what you said. And because he had this vision. So you have to have a vision. You have to temper sometimes your vision to get what you want, but you have to have a mission. You have to have a vision. A nation, a sovereign nation. That's then young children grow up embracing. I remember for me, it was the space program under Kennedy.
Hmm.
You know, as a young child, I didn't understand rockets, but you were captured that man could create this rocket that can take you to the moon, and we could walk on the moon. What we could do anything we want with our human creative mind.
That's
And that's
right.
why it had to be killed.
That's right.
That's that's the enemy's response. And that's why everybody listening, I want to encourage you to get totally active, but and active with these kinds of ideas that and this substance. And
Mhm.
because if the citizenry can think like this is why I should be mayor of Oakland because I can think like this.
I
you know,
agree. And I agree.
you
And
know,
that's just a stepping stone for you, Mindy, because I think that you would work great under or as like a governor or like somebody working with our future governor if once we can get the election systems to be fair again.
and we will.
You just have a bright future for California and the welfare of California. So I'm just really proud to know you.
Thank you. Same here. And so I think that, if we look at this bigger picture, this is how I try to get people to think about it. For here in California, and I would like to play that little clip of Lutnick because I want people to hear exactly what happened at Davos. And because to know that we have this going on means California is part of the United States. We're behind enemy lines, that's true. But that's why Gavin Newsom was also sent to Davos to make a total fool of himself, to totally attack Trump. And I think Secretary Scott Bessent took him on tremendously. And
Yeah.
and go ahead.
He did. He handled it great. It was almost as if Trump came to Bassett, on the way there and said, "Look, this is what I need you to do some heavy lifting for me, and you can just put Gavin Newsom on notice with all the things that he's doing with his buffoonery." I'd appreciate that, and it was
Yep.
great the way because Bassett, he's kind of a dry, just to the point, analytics branded man. But the way that he was able to do it so greatly, I just thought he did a great job talking about Newsom. But yeah,
Yep.
let me
Clip
pull
up.
up this Howard
Okay.
Lutnick part here at Davos. One second here. Let me pull up the screen.
And while you're pulling up the screen, Bessent did say Trump is coming for California. Hmm?
That's right.
In one of his statements he made, he said, Trump is coming for California.
He
And
did.
yep.
Right.
First time I've had the privilege of meeting you. I've seen you on TV a lot. In person, the impression is even more overwhelming. Of, on the one hand, kind of extraordinarily ebullient, dynamic.
That was in a nice way, Howard.
Dynamic. These are good words. These are all good. I'm coming to a different tone in a second. But like initially, it's this just extraordinary ebullience, dynamism. You were saying you've sealed deals for $1.5 trillion in jobs and investment into the United States.
Yes.
And then you said, and this is where the tone shifts, you got to understand, I'm the hammer. These were your words. I'm the hammer. Because the people I'm dealing with know that unless they deliver the kind of investments I'm looking for, I'm coming with 100% tariffs. And that duality, I think, between the dynamism, the constructiveness, the forcefulness of the American state, which was, after all, also something many of us saw in the Biden administration, and this element of threat, is what many of us are actually trying to come to terms with. Because this is, to say the least, unfamiliar. And when it moves from the zone of economic policy to the question that is directly under the subtitle of our talk today, which is sovereignty, and we're talking about the territory of Greenland, and it's coupled so directly to tariffs, it's a fundamental shock to the system. You can read it off the faces and the rhetoric of every single European politician and business person I've spoken to while we've been here, and we're also getting reactions from around the world in similar tones. So I really wanted to ask you to help us understand, not in a sense what your motivations are, because I get it, like you want Greenland, it makes sense. You're proud Americans, you're advocates of President Trump's policy. What I struggled more with is how you imagine others react to this. I mean, if you put yourself in the position of your Danish counterpart, who's a proud Dane and a loyal executor of the Danish government's position, how do you envision this going, how does this go down?
Well, I think you should start at a much higher level.
Okay.
We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind. And what we are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty on any other nation. And if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies. Okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries. Why would you do that? Why would the United States of America, which has oil and natural gas, try to convert to all electricity? China does not have oil and natural gas. Electricity and electric cars make perfect sense to them. That is practical and logical. So the point I want to make, and I want people to think about, is that America First is the job of our government to take care of our workers, to make sure their lives are better for it. And then don't be America alone, right? But be America First. And I would suggest that policy is something for other countries to deeply consider, to take care of their own, and then we will work out wonderful relationships between us. But I want to point out, when America shines, the world shines. Close your eyes and think of a world without America in it. It becomes pretty dark, pretty darn quickly. When America shines, right? And everyone said, oh, you're going to do all these tariffs, you're going to destroy the world. The world's stock markets are up. Which ones of them? All of them.
Can I bring you back to Greenland?
No. It's unnecessary. It's the Western Hemisphere is vital for the United States of America. Our national security people are on it, and they care about it, and I'm going to leave it to them to address with our allies, with our friends, and with everyone how they work it out. But the Western Hemisphere matters to the United States of America, and the United States of America, as I've just articulated, really, really matters to the world. When America shines, the world shines, because they all need to make sure America is strong and powerful to take care of them, God forbid. And so I think America and the Western Hemisphere are vital to America, and I'm going to leave that to my national security people to address.
And you know what happened at the, just to follow up on, he's the Commerce Secretary, if people didn't know, Lutnick. And Trump, at the summit, after he formed the Board of Peace, I was just thinking about Canada when he was talking about Greenland. He uninvited Mark Carney in Canada from being part of the Board of Peace. And Carney now, and he just increased tariffs on Canada 100% because of what their deals with China. So
That's
I just
right.
wanted to add that. I just wanted to add it. Just struck me listening to
Yeah. Yeah, the Prime Minister of Canada is really digging himself into a hole the way he's been getting close with the Chinese Communist Party and a lot of the policies that he's trying to implement. So, yeah, I can see why he wouldn't have been invited to the Board of Peace. So, but I really liked what Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick had said there, because he's right. From my opinion, the way that the World Economic Forum has been behaving for a long time now, and they were all sold out to this globalist model. And what I like the most about what he was saying is that he obviously wants to implement an America First policy along with President Trump that puts American people first, but we're not isolationists. We
Right.
we want to have policies that work with the other nations that want to be true allies, not these, only ally if it benefits them, but they're also working with our adversaries. They truly want a great reciprocal relationship, but we have to restore our sovereign borders, our sovereign nations again, and they have to understand that we have to put America first in order for the new system to roll out and be successful, and not that globalist old system that's been proven to fail.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and it's really remarkable. I would encourage everybody watching to get those clips and show it to people, because most people don't know what really happened at Davos.
That's
If
right. That's right. Actually, just for fun, and we can edit this up, but I want
Yeah.
to find that what Bassett was saying about Gavin
Oh,
Newsom.
good. If you
It's
can
just
play that, perfect. It's
it's just
perfect.
great. Let me go ahead and grab
No,
that.
no, it's good. Go
One
ahead.
second here. I'm gonna find that real quick. Bear with me.
And I'd encourage everybody watching to share this with everybody you can, because it's only because of people like Matt we get a chance to get the truth out.
That's right. We are the media now.
Yep,
We the
yep.
people are the media. Let's see. Talks.
Yeah, oh no, Bassett was so. And Gavin, see, Gavin didn't go there on his own. He was, well, you're finding it. He's good buddy with Mark Carney. In fact, one point, Gavin is, doing this last minute, 30-minute interview. And he actually praises Mark Carney and calls Trump an authoritarian dictator and praises
Right.
Mark Carney. So you see who really runs Gavin Newsom is this top globalist British elite.
It is, along with the Chinese Communist Party
His party,
working
right.
together. Let me go ahead.
Exactly.
I think I found it here. Bear with me.
Okay,
Let
go
me go
ahead.
ahead and get to the share screen here.
Governor calls you smug. Are you smug?
Yeah, I think it's very, very ironic that, Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less about economics than Kamala Harris. He's here this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros, and the Davos is a perfect place for a man who, when everyone else was on lockdown, when he was having people arrested for going to church, he was having $1,000 a night meals at the French Laundry, and I'm sure the California people won't forget that. And I can tell my message to Governor Newsom is the Trump administration is coming to California. We are going to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse. And I was told he was asked to give a speech on his signature policies, but he's not speaking, because what have his economic policies brought? Outward migration from California, a gigantic budget deficit, the largest homeless population in America, and the poor folks in the Palisades who had their homes burned down. He is here hobnobbing with the global elite while his California citizens are still homeless. Shame on him. He is too smug, too self-absorbed, and too economically illiterate to know anything.
Thank you very much.
Let me know if you need any further clarification.
Europeans think this is diplomacy and this will ultimately
Well, this is
work.
diplomacy with Donald Trump. He's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you. One or the other.
And Europe's being
people
devoured?
need to stand, but no, the Europeans could be if they continue down this path and process. They need to stand tall, stand firm, stand united. Don't look. You say this a year ago. We should have been having this conversation, and they didn't. Okay, and now you're paying the price. Exactly what anyone objective observer would have anticipated we'd be where we are today.
What do you think Ursula von der Leyen needs to say?
That could lead to the end of the European Union?
Well, I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but this guy's a wrecking ball. I hope people are waking up to what we're dealing with. This is it's code red. I mean, you guys are still playing by all set of rules. Everybody, the globe is with this guy. He's unmoored. It's the law of the jungle. It's the rule of dawn. And I hope it's dawning on the world what we're up against. I mean, this is serious. This guy is he's not mad. He's very intentional, but he's unmoored and he's unhinged, and it requires you. The goal is whatever he wants it to be. The goal is the world in his image.
What would your
He's
advice?
a narcissist. I mean, it's no advice. Common sense. Why don't folks do what they say publicly, what they're saying in private? Why don't they just simply do what they know is right? I mean, everybody's talking behind his back. They're laughing at him. Meanwhile, they're sucking up to him. It's embarrassing. I mean, you're modeling behavior for our kids, generations of folks. This is not diplomacy. This is stupidity.
If they don't act, does this end with military solution?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it just who knows what happens in that respect. But with Donald Trump, you saw what happened to Maduro. You're seeing what's happening on American streets. You saw what happened in the state of California, where he put 700 active duty Marines. He didn't send them overseas. Last year, he sent them to the American city, second largest city in the United States of America. He's got 1,500 active folks, members of the military, on call near Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed watching it, and it's so, from my perspective, and I really do pray that the American people are becoming more wise to the tactics that they use. When I say they, I say the globalist loyalists, like Gavin Newsom, where he basically mirrors, or he projects and accuses people like President Trump and others of what he and his colleagues are doing. You know, it's the telltale spin that a politician will typically do when all the eyes are on him. He wants all the eyes to be somewhere else, and he just projects what he is actually doing himself upon President Trump. And to me, it seems like he feels that the walls are closing in on him.
Yep. That's exactly right. And they know their walls they are closing. His controllers know they're closing. So now it reminds you the story of the emperor's new clothes, you know?
Right. It's so true. It's so true. And people are seeing it because, I mean, the California people that he's been governing for a long time now, over 8 years, they're feeling it. They're feeling it in their wallets. They're feeling a sense of even paranoia, depending on where they live, because if they live in an area that's prone for fires, they've seen how all of the other areas have burned and how those people have been treated after they've lost their entire, home, life savings, everything that they ever had, that was personal to them. There's this heightened sense of paranoia and frustration. No matter if, you voted Democrat or not, people are starting to, I think, see that, and they're kind of waking up to what's possibly going on. To what extent, I'm not sure. I don't know how we're able to gauge that. I don't trust the polling in California at all, because it's just as misleading as and corrupt as the election systems. So I just the way I do it is I just take Ubers in different cities and towns and just see if I can gather information from the Uber driver, and I just kind of
There you
collect
go.
data that way.
That's a good way to do it, on the
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
So,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, so this is just really interesting, though, the way that everything is happening on a global level and how it can be related to what's happening on a local level within our state of California, and how the policies are shifting completely. And you can see kind of who is taking control into the future with how things are going to be ran. And it is the America First policy in President Trump's administration.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll just bring it to the local for a minute here in California, in Oakland, which I know intimately well, because it's a very interesting fight that's developed in Oakland, because it is, well, we're a sanctuary state, but it's also a sanctuary city. And the progressive Democrats, who have run this city for a long time, this didn't just happen in the last few years. Oakland used to be, people don't realize it, Oakland used to be a great industrial city. in the 1940s and 50s, you had it was known as the Detroit of the West. It had General Motors, all these different car companies, Del Monte Foods,
Right. Oil companies.
oil companies, I mean, shipping companies.
Right.
I mean, and now if you would take a screenshot of East Oakland, which I know intimately, I've sort of made East Oakland, it's dear to my heart because of how destroyed East Oakland is now with the drugs, the fentanyl, the dump garbage in the streets, no industry, no business, people getting shot all the time and killed. And this was a takedown which was deliberate as it was the national takedown. So it's the microcosm of the macrocosm. And, you know, and this is why I decided to run for mayor of Oakland. Because I couldn't stand to see it anymore, and nobody was standing up. There are good people fighting the fight in Oakland, and I work with some of them. Some of them are Democrats, some of them are independents, some of them are what they call nonpartisan.
Didn't you have somebody arrested recently? Was it the previous mayor of Oakland
It
was
was the
arrested?
previous mayor and her boyfriend are under federal indictment, could face 90 years in prison for, sweetheart deals that they made.
Wow.
Yeah, and we actually recalled her. I work with a group of people here in Oakland who are very good people. I really like them tremendously. They ran the recall campaigns for both our DA, Pamela Price, and our mayor, Sheng Tao, at the time. And we did recall both of them.
Now, were you guys using paper recall like a ballot, or was it through a machine?
It was all through a machine. It was the mail-in, actually, mainly it's the mail-in ballots. Most of the voting in California, 90% of it is mail-in ballots. People don't realize you can go to your local, now we don't, well, the county I'm in, Alameda County, not to make a long story out of it, is part of a system where we don't have local precincts anymore. And so you only have these big vote centers around the city. But you can go to a vote center and vote with a paper ballot, which is what I do, But it's so crazy because every county has their own rules. In my county, they count votes coming in a week after the election. I mean, it's just, if
It
it's so
just opens it up for
post-election.
fraud. Yeah, it
Yeah,
opens it up for fraud. Like we need to be able to get our elections tabulated within 24 to 48 hours. Not even, I think 24 hours. I mean,
it's 24 like it
we've
used to
seen it.
be.
Yeah, it used to be 24 hours. I mean, that's what we need to come back to.
And I think we might because there's a case before the Supreme Court which they accepted. I forget which state exactly the particulars, but it is they're going to have to make a decision that you can't do this week after voting. So if the Supreme Court votes that goes with that decision, that will set a precedent that we could use. And so the recall of the mayor and DA was done by the mail-in ballots or going to the vote centers. And we won it. I mean, we keep remembering Donald Trump did election this time around because we made it too big to rig. People came out, and people need to do this for the midterms.
Right.
In fact, Trump is now, there was just passed at the last RNC meeting, they are going to have a midterm convention of the Republican Party, which Trump is going to be very vocal because he knows without his voice, and that's why he's going to be touring all 50 states, that you don't have a strong enough Republican Party that's actually, you have some individuals who are, but as a party, it's not, like he said to the Republicans at the Republican congressional retreat just recently, go with my policies, do as I do. We will win if you do that. And so this is why everybody viewing, it's so important to get engaged, not only with my campaign for mayor, but wherever you are, and just to go back to Oakland for a minute, and then I'll tie it up, the situation here. So there are very good people who I work with, but no one has a vision. outside of the box to actually, the key question is, will you work with President Trump? Now, I'm the only candidate that ran last time in the special election to replace Sheng Tao, who we recalled. And so far, it's early now because election is not until November 2026, because we have only ranked choice voting in Oakland for our seats in the city, which is another problem, but we won't get into that right now.
Yeah.
So we don't have the primary, we just have ranked choice voting in November. And but even the better people who are running, the good people who are running, they don't have this bigger vision of how to rebuild the city, which I want to set up. I want to tear down a lot of these buildings, work with President Trump. The first thing I would do if I were mayor is I'd call up President Trump and say, "Hi, President, I need to talk with you and I need your help."
Mhm. Well, yeah,
And
because I mean, you can start to see the connections with the other blue California cities on the corruption scams, like for example, the homelessness industrial complex, as they're calling it, with the way that they're siphoning not only state taxpayer dollars but federal taxpayer dollars into these NGOs that they're appointing to run a homelessness campaign to help, but in fact, they're actually laundering the money and moving it into personal accounts and stealing the taxpayer money. So I can only imagine, because I've driven through Oakland. I know how bad it is with the homelessness there, and there's areas that are just, it's nothing but tent cities in Oakland. So you
yeah,
know that allegedly, if it's happening in Los Angeles County and City of Los Angeles, then in theory it could be happening in Oakland and San
oh, it
Francisco.
is.
Hmm.
Yeah, we have some pretty big grifters on our city council, like Carol Fife and her husband, who are running a lot of nonprofits, which are benefiting from what you just said. So,
Yeah.
yep. But if you, the vision to be able to replace that, to clean it out, and I do believe we can, I mean, I would call for an outside company to completely come in and do an audit of
Hmm.
every financial institution in the city of Oakland. I would
Right.
work with, ask President Trump to help with getting the drug cartels, because we have the drug cartels live in Oakland. The Sinaloa
Right.
cartel and other cartels live in Oakland. They safe house
Right.
here. The police, besides we don't have enough of them, the city ordinances prevent our police from doing what they need to do. And I've done 8 ride-alongs, roughly 7 or 8, with the East Oakland police, so I know a lot of this firsthand. These guys are incredible. But the city ordinances, can you imagine? And the city council doesn't change the city ordinances.
Right. Is it because
They,
they kind of fall in lockstep with the DEI policies, and they're too worried about, worrying about identity politics and LGBTQ rights over the needs of their citizens and giving the law enforcement the ability to do their job?
yeah, this has been a big thing, because they're too busy fighting ICE, lying about the whole immigration question. And we did win one battle in the city council, I have to admit, working with some of my friends. We did get the flock cameras. Those are the cameras that read the license plates, which
Hmm.
help the cops do track down some of the crime. But yeah, they're too busy with everything else, and they won't change the ordinances. And we have a police commission which oversees the police department, which is completely run by everybody who shouldn't be on a police commission. We should get rid of it. We've been under 20 years at least of federal oversight. So our officers, if they put their hands on their belt and a criminal says he looked at me mean, the officer can get suspended or fined.
Hmm.
We waste more money on this kind of insanity.
Hmm.
So these are the kind of changes with President Trump we could make. Now, this is the big, as well as ending the sanctuary city, which I completely endorse President Trump's move to try to get legislation through the Congress to get rid of sanctuary cities and actually make the cities and states like California part of the United States again, where we can, which it once was. I mean,
Right.
so it's not like we were never there, It's just
Right.
this been besieged by this political enemy. So these are the kind of this is the fight that I'm waging in Oakland and the big thing is to get people to break the controlled environment, which is what I'm trying to do. Because I'm calling on Democrats who are not progressive, independents, NPPs, as we call them,
It's
you
funny
know,
how they call themselves progressive, Mindy, but yet they're kind of regressive. The
aren't they?
regressive Democrats.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. It's amazing how they mass butcher the English language, you know?
Sure, it's all word
Yeah.
warfare. It's like trying to rewrite the dictionary to help it work for their narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like saying the Federal Reserve is no, it's not part of the federal government. It's privately
And they
owned.
don't have anything in reserves.
Yeah, right. That's true. Good point. I like
Yeah.
that, Matt. Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is the fight I'm in here is to get them to have the it's a get the I don't know if the right word is courage or just to see
Right.
that if you're going to really solve the problems,
Yeah,
you have to go and make the leap with me and President Trump.
that's
Now, I
right.
did run in the special election. There was 9 candidates. The way that election went was Barbara Lee, the former congressman, who's unfortunately now our mayor, and Lauren Taylor, former city councilman, had $1.6 million. They got all the coverage. I mean, the whole election was focusing on them. Of course, they got the majority of the votes. The rest of us who were active, there were 9 active out of the 10. There was one person who was it took his name off the ballot, but it was still on there. But I don't count him for anything. I say the 9 active candidates who split up the rest of the votes, which weren't that many, but there were some. I actually came in third.
I believe it.
And to me, that said, so I am a political institution in the city. And
Hmm.
people will work with me. I work, as I said, with Democrats, Republicans, NPPs
Yeah,
on missions, like to get the flock cameras.
right.
And it was very good.
And I know that I've talked to you in the past, and I think you have also good relationships with a lot of the church leaders in Oakland too, of different denominations and faith leaders. I think that's
Yes,
important too, to give them the courage to know that they can speak about political issues again, and you can help support them if they have that courage and find that courage. And it's a bigger systemic issue, I think, in these blue cities because, like, let's say you get the police department and commissioner to have courage to go and do their job. You also have to have the right judicial aspect in your city. Otherwise, if there's, Soros appointed judges and DAs,
yeah,
they're going to let people out the back door with no with no issues and no jail time. So I see how you can do everything that you possibly can in the city of Oakland, but then it also has to do with who we elect as California governor, who our attorney general will be, who's going to work around him, and then
right.
as a unit, as a team, working with the administration and cooperating with them on what they want to do to help reinforce what your policies will be in Oakland.
No, you're exactly right. And also controller, very important. Mm.
Because they
And
allow for the audits, right?
yep, I learned the controllers have a lot of power they're probably even more powerful than almost any other position in the state.
Right.
And so this is why it is, you know, you need a mayor in Oakland who's going to, like you said, reach out to these institutions
Right.
and actually develop the city. It could become great again. And
Yeah,
we have to because you're talking about the younger generation. You're
that's
talking
right.
about the next generations. That's to me why I'm in this battle. I'm,
Right.
74, God willing,
Yeah.
but,
But you
but
still fight like you do in your 20s. I'm going to tell you, man, like you and your husband, you guys get yourself out there. You travel around the state politically. And I know that you're boots on the ground. Like you were mentioning, you've done ride-alongs with the police department. I know you've met with church leaders before.
oh yeah.
And I know you're very active. You have the stamina. And I think it's Holy Spirit derived. I know that the Lord's working through you. And I know where your heart's at. And I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing and the fact that you don't, well, you won't ever give up on your city and on your country. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pull up your website so folks can
Okay,
know
great.
where to find you. All right, Mindy, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up your uh, website so your constituents know where to find
Okay,
you. People who
great.
loved this episode heard and learned so much about who you are and what topics we talked about today, and who might have family in Oakland and surrounding areas of Alameda County. And people can find you at electmindy.com.
Right.
Here's your website here so people know what it looks like. And then in here, it talks about your background and experience and all of your accolades of what you've been doing. And in here, it talks about, looks like you bring current events to the forefront, like Gavin Newsom. So you got, and with all the serious work that we get ourselves involved with, it's okay to have fun and
Yeah.
joke every now and again, because we have to
Ex-
laugh our way through
yeah,
this process, right?
exactly.
And I'd encourage our viewership, if you'd like to support Mindy and her campaign with all the work that she's doing in Oakland, because we're in this together, folks. If you're in Southern California, I mean, we have to help all of the America First candidates in all of the big blue cities and across the state. A little bit can go a long way. So I encourage you,
Exactly.
please help Mindy in her campaign, share her website, watch her videos, and this would be a great candidate for you to choose if you live in Oakland, California. And Mindy, it's been a delightful conversation today. Is there anything you'd like to close with?
Well, I just say, first of all, to thank you, Matt, for having me. And it is a blessing. And I love the dialogue. And I would just close with encouraging everyone who sees this to share it. Please go to my website and to be inspired, if you can, to run for office yourself. And if you can't, but know somebody else in your area, the more of us that run, the more of us that, I don't care if it's, it doesn't have to be, run for school board, run for,
Right.
water
County.
board.
Right.
Yeah, right. We need that. If we can fill, there's every position with somebody of who thinks like we do, has the love of mankind and God like we do, it's going to help. And I tell you, it's a lot of work, but it's a great place to be, because you really get to go out and meet people and leave this world a better place, because you were born and you did something that made a difference. So that's how I would end it, Matt.
That's right. Well, thank you, Mindy, so much for joining us on the Ultra MK podcast, where together we are reversing the narrative. And I just want to say, God bless you so much for all your hard work. God bless your husband for being such a great partner to you in this venture. And I can't wait to catch up with you again soon, Mindy.
Okay, thanks. Anytime, Matt.